My name is Bram Nicholas, and I'm the COO of ETIS Lanka, economic training and information services company in Sri Lanka. I'm extremely positive because I can see a lot of interaction. The students are thinking about their own finances and thinking about their jobs as well. That it's not just me talking about the theory and my experiences, but also practical case studies from the other students. So the thing about wealth management is that I basically try to give the students a tiny bit of an introduction as to alternatives to what they would otherwise do, which is mainly invest in deposit. And of course, nowadays, there's more and more interest in things like very speculative assets like Bitcoin. And so I try to give the students a bit more of a broader framework so that they understand, what is the risk with investing in things like cryptocurrency? What are the other possibilities? What is the stock market all about? How can we make decisions as to whether we invest in one asset or the other? And so those are the sorts of basic capabilities that I expect students to get from the class. So what the students will basically learn about is how I look at investments. And that starts really with a basic understanding of what the assets are about. And one interesting thing there is that actually a lot of people, even really well-known investors, don't know that much about things outside of the stock market. So one of those things is the bond market. And I try to teach the students about why would you invest in bonds? Why do a lot of for instance, investment banks invest in bonds? And what is that all about? So I give them the full picture of what are the main assets that you can invest in. And then I try to take them through my decision-making process, which involves a bit of an alternative way of looking at investments, not through typical economics, but through the lens of business cycles. I think the students, they grab onto that because the idea of business cycles is much more attractive to them, and I think makes more real-world sense to them than a lot of the more abstract and theoretical stuff that you find in the textbooks related to investments. So the way that I introduce this to my students is, first, this course could really help you problem solve with, of course, your personal wealth management. So just any savings that you have, you would normally put that in a fixed deposit. But are there any other options? What could you invest that money in otherwise? But there are also other things aside from personal wealth management that can be looked at. One of those things that I teach my students is when we decide on mortgages, that can actually have a lot of impact on our finances in the future, or whether we take out a long-term or a short-term mortgage, whether we have a fixed or variable interest rate mortgage. And I try to tell my students even simple decisions like these, or decisions that seem simple, can have such a huge impact on your future cash flows. And another one which is really important for a lot of the students in my class, because they hold management positions in their companies, they often have to make decisions based on what I'm talking about. So I had one student, for instance, that was asking me about whether she could use the things that we were discussing in class for pricing strategy. Another one, which is far more important, is actually financial management, or sometimes called treasury management. So here we see that actually some of the students who are involved in the treasury departments, they have to make decisions on short-term financing, working capital financing, and what interest rate to accept from the bank, whether they do shorter term or longer term. And I try to go through these exercises with them to see what impact this would make and how they can use the knowledge from the courses in their business decision making. So I'm extremely positive about that because I can see a lot of interaction. And that's actually because the students are thinking about their own finances and thinking about their jobs as well. And because both are so relevant for what we're discussing in class, And because I encourage them to apply it to their own real lives, there is a lot of interaction. So I get questions about problems that they have in their work, but also students that are interested in learning a bit more about investments, but that want to go beyond the typical, let's say, risky modern investments of just putting your money in cryptocurrencies. And they want to understand a bit more about, okay, what does it mean to invest in the stock market? Are there any other possibilities? What does it mean to invest in gold? What do we look at for these decisions? And how can we construct a whole portfolio of these different assets? And so the interaction has been actually great and also contributes a lot to the classes themselves, because I can see it helps the other students as well, that it's not just me talking about the theory and my experiences, but also practical case studies from the other students. And I see it helps the group as a whole a lot.